All right, Braves fans, let's get rolling. I'm George McNair, and this is State of the Braves. Guys, awesome to be back with you as always, and we're a few days off of it now, but, it's kind of nice to take a few days to step back with, anytime the Braves make a big move like the one they just made for Chris Sale, it's nice to give a couple days for perspective, get a little more of the full news, so I can come to you with a little bit more of a thoughtful perspective for you guys. So I want to break down this Chris Sale trade. As you, I'm sure, heard, the Braves trade for veteran starter Chris Sale. They get him from Boston, sending Vaughn Grissom to the Red Sox. So the Braves not only get Chris Sale, but they also receive $17 million from Boston, as they will kind of amazingly only pay Sale $500,000 next season. I've heard a couple of different reports in terms of the deferred money Chris Sale will receive. I've heard some say that he'll receive $10 million in 2039. I've heard $10 million in 2040. I've heard a couple different things. So I'm not going to promise you that is exact, but the fact is the Braves, while they'll have to pay another solid chunk for Chris Sale in the future, it is deferred, and it's deferred money nowhere near like a Shohei Ohtani size deferred chunk of money. So yeah, they'll do that. The Braves don't typically defer money like that, but for a chance to get Chris Sale, they did it. And he also has a player option for 2025. So the way that option works for him, the 2025 money is a vesting option if Sale finishes in the top 10 in the Cy Young voting. And of course, if he did that, the Braves would happily pay him $20 million to come back, because this deal would just look like absolute brilliance from Alex Anthopoulos if Sale bounced back in that way. And the Red Sox would probably just, quit baseball at that point if that happens. But if it doesn't happen, which is the more likely scenario, it would simply turn into a team option. The Braves could accept that $20 million option for 2025. Or, if this move doesn't work out, if Sale is injured for most of the season or just is not performing well, they can decline that option and kind of wash their hands of Chris Sale moving forward. So guys, Chris Sale, to the average baseball fan or the casual baseball fan, most people know Chris Sale, but the funny thing about him is, he was so good honestly in the last decade, and has not been good for about 5 years. So he feels really old. He's getting older. He's certainly a veteran. He'll be 35 at the beginning of the 2024 season. But guys, this guy was a dominant pitcher and probably one of the top 3 pitchers in the 2010s in that decade. He actually went 7 straight years from 2012 to 2018 with top 6 finishes in the Cy Young voting in the American League. So not only was he excellent, but he was consistently excellent for 7 straight years. And it wasn't just that he was, had great stuff. It was also he was durable during that time. He averaged 200 innings pitched over those 7 seasons. He averaged 5.6 WAR during those seasons, according to Fangraphs. He averaged a strikeout per 9 innings 11 strikeouts per 9 innings during those seasons. And actually, he's maintained that strikeout percentage throughout his career. In fact, he is the all-time leader in Ks per 9. So, this is a strikeout machine of a pitcher. Sale also helped lead Boston to their last World Series in 2018. And so it was all good for Sale. He came up with the White Sox, and his first season with Boston also went really, really well. But it has been downhill for him ever since. So, give you just a little bit more history on Sale, who probably now is more notorious for his injury history than he is in his kind of previous life with all of these great accolades beforehand. So in 2019, about 2/3 of the way through the season, he was shut down with elbow inflammation. He tried to just rest it. Of course, you guys know that a lot of times elbow inflammation will lead pitchers to have to get Tommy John surgery, and that's what happened to Sale. He showed up in spring training of 2020 before the COVID shutdown, and suddenly he realized he needed Tommy John surgery. So he got that. He missed all the 2020 season and most of the 2021 season. He came back in March of that year, just kind of, as you do coming off of Tommy John, just getting your feet back under you. But then 2022 came around and he had a series of just really fluky injuries. These are not arm-related injuries. He had a rib stress fracture in spring training. Then he came back from that. Then he got a comebacker to the mound, broken pinky finger from that on his pitching hand. That shut him down. Then he came back from that, or trying to, and he fell off his bike and broke his wrist. So just, these are things that they don't worry you in terms of his arm, but it's just he always seems to be hurt, right, since 2019 on. And so 2023 comes around last season, and it went a bit better for him. He made 20 starts. He did have one other, I think, shoulder-related injury. I don't think it's actually like the shoulder socket, which can, give you a lot of pause. I think it was more of like the shoulder blade area. But anyways, he was shut down once, but ends up making 20 starts. He actually, when he came back, he made 9 starts to end the season, and they were all very good. He ended with a 4.30 ERA for the 2023 season, but got a little unlucky. He had an expected ERA of 3.71, and he still maintained that strikeout per 9 ratio of 11 strikeouts per 9 innings. So his stuff is still really good. His fastball might be down a tick, but it still typically touches 96 miles an hour. And he can get higher than that. There's been some video going around social media of him striking out Bryce Harper, and it was just near the end of last year, and touching 99 on 3 straight pitches and striking him out. So he has elite stuff still, and the fact is there are very few pitchers on earth who have ever pitched at the level that Chris Sale has. And, so to get that guy who maybe still has a little bit in the tank, is pretty special. There are a lot of different, Braves fans have wanted the Braves to go out and get a pitcher, and they did so with this deal. It was a surprise who they got. And I think a lot of Braves fans wanted the Braves to go out and get Dylan Cease, or, some of these other trade targets. Maybe they wanted to go out and get Yamamoto. You guys might have wanted a bigger splash. I don't know. I mean, certainly I had my sights on different guys not named Chris Sale. Chris Sale at his best is an elite pitcher, and I'm probably going to repeat myself a couple of times when I say this, but Chris Sale when he's on the mound, and I know hasn't been often lately, but when he is on the mound, he's always good. He's never been bad. And even that 4.30 ERA last year, like I said, a little unlucky. And that's really been about as mediocre as he's been. He's always been in kind of the low 3s, even high 2 ERAs, and an elite strikeout pitcher his entire career. So what can Braves fans expect from Chris Sale? Well, I mean, the fact is we can't ignore his injury history. That is the obvious reason why he was able to be traded for one player. Vaughn Grissom, we love Vaughn Grissom. You guys know I'm a huge Vaughn Grissom fan. I'm sad to see him go. I'm going to talk about Vaughn a little bit at the end of this episode. But the fact is, you never would have been able to get another pitcher of this ability if Chris Sale didn't have the injury issues to come along with it. A one-for-one kind of trade like this, it just wouldn't have been possible for a Dylan Cease or for, fill in the blank, other guys out there who might potentially be available. So, to me, even though Sale has these injuries in his past, they do feel a bit fluky, and most of them are not arm related. As he had Tommy John, but what pitcher out there nowadays hasn't had Tommy John surgery? He's 3+ years past his Tommy John, and he's the end of this past season he was throwing 98, 99 miles an hour. So nothing is guaranteed, but the fact is Chris Sale is a very rare pitcher, and I really like this deal. It's not perfect. He's not the perfect player, but I do like the potential of what this does for the Braves pitching staff. So, you guys know I go to Fangraphs sometimes just for projections and just getting an idea of, a realistic projection of what a player might be next year. So Fangraphs projects Sale with a 3.74 ERA and a 2.8 WAR season next year in 141 innings pitched. So that production, if I'm trying to kind of compare Sale to somebody, the Braves early in the in the offseason were going after Aaron Nola. I kind of view this as Aaron Nola was clearly their number one pitching target for this offseason. Obviously, they weren't able to sign him. He goes back to Philly. I don't know for certain that Chris Sale was plan B. I mean, he could have been plan C or plan D. We don't know the other irons they had in the fire, but they pivot away from Nola. Nola is... what is he? He's a really solid pitcher who is very reliable. He really hasn't had injury history, but he's also incredibly, he has playoff experience, and he's had a lot of playoff success. He hasn't been perfect in the playoffs, but playoff success nonetheless. I think there are some comparables other than the reliability thing between Nola and Sale. And so when you look at this projection for Sale, it's very similar to Nola's projections, except of course Nola is projected to get about 50 more innings than Sale next year, which seems reasonable. But in terms of actual value when they're on the mound, Sale might actually be the better pitcher still to this day. I mean, just in terms of, that wins above replacement per innings pitched compared to Nola. So you're getting a very good pitcher. Again, it's just a matter of how many innings can he give you, and maybe innings for the season aren't even that important. It's more important that he's healthy going into the postseason and is able to contribute then. So, the Braves will gladly take this Fangraphs projection if it is correct, especially if Sale can be there for the playoffs. His in-season contributions are far less important to the Braves. The Braves are probably a 100-win team without Chris Sale. So it's really just a matter of they need another playoff performer, another playoff starter. Alex Anthopoulos said as much when he gave his interview after this trade, and that's what Chris Sale potentially can be. Sale is also a notoriously fiery competitor. If you go out and just YouTube or Google some comments that Chris Sale has had post game in the past, it's definitely interesting. He is a colorful guy. He doesn't mince words. He is fiery, to say the least. And I think a lot of people have been wanting the Braves. They're mostly a team of a lot of nice guys, and Sale might not be that. I think he's a guy that hates to lose. He's going to be competing really on another level out there compared to a lot of people. He cares. I think he really wants to be with the Braves. There's early reports that he lives close to the Braves spring training facility. He's already asked to go down and start working down there. So I think he's really energized by being a part of the Braves. He had to exercise, or he had to waive his no trade clause to make this deal happen. So he wants to be a Brave. He wants to be in Atlanta. And you can imagine a guy who's been injured over the last several years. This has to re-energize him in a big way to maybe have a little bit of a career renaissance and have an opportunity for at least the next 2 seasons he's under contract to vie for another World Series or two. So, when you look at the trade for sale, I think one thing that is obvious is comparing or contrasting this deal to a potential deal for Dylan Cease. It's been most of the offseason that rumors have been flying that the Braves were interested in trading for Dylan Cease, and whether they were still interested or not, that Dylan Cease is still on the market, and the White Sox are actively shopping him. So, I actually, as I've stepped back, and this is why it's been helpful to have a couple days to think through this deal, I actually think it makes a lot more sense for the Braves to make this deal for Chris Sale than it would to trade for Dylan Cease. I'm not saying that Chris Sale is the better pitcher now. He's had the better overall, long-term career, but he's an older pitcher. Right now, I think Dylan Cease is the better pitcher. Maybe not by a lot if Chris Sale is on the mound a reasonable amount of innings. But that being said, Dylan Cease was going to be a much, much more expensive player to acquire. Very early on in the offseason, it was reported that the Braves were checking in on Dylan Cease. My take on that is I think they probably moved off of him pretty quickly. There have been other reports. For instance, the White Sox asked for the Reds' top 3 prospects, all in the top 100 and then some. And, you start thinking about, okay, so does that mean that for the Braves to trade for Dylan Cease, they would have had to have given up Hurston Waldrop, A.J. Smith-Shawver, and Vaughn Grissom, and something else? I cannot imagine the Braves doing that, especially for a guy as good as he is. He's only under contract for 2 more years, and you're just probably not going to extend him. He's a Scott Boras client. Those guys always go to the free agent market. And so, you get 2 years of Dylan Cease, but you mortgage a lot of your future by giving away 2 guys who really could be fixtures in your rotation moving forward. Of course, they are prospects. It's not guaranteed, but both of these guys are at AAA. We've seen about 50 innings from A.J. Smith-Shawver, and they've been pretty good. It just, I think, doesn't make a lot of sense to jettison those guys to Chicago with only 2 years of control for Dylan Cease. Again, compare that to Chris Sale, where the Braves only have to part with Vaughn Grissom. As much as I love Grissom, and I think he's going to be a good major league player, he simply didn't have a spot with the Braves. So the Braves don't really value him as much. On his on-field value is very low for the Braves. And so it just doesn't impact you and how the Braves, it's not going to impact their success moving forward to trade Vaughn Grissom. On top of that, the Red Sox send $17 million back in the deal. So even the monetary cost to bring in Chris Sale is lessened significantly. In terms of both of these pitchers, 2 years of control for Dylan Cease, 2 years of control for Chris Sale. So that's a wash. You would be getting a Dylan Cease who is younger, who seems to be more reliable. He's taken the mound and been close to 180 to 200 innings throughout his young career. Of course, we know that has not been the case recently with Chris Sale. But I really do think, nothing's guaranteed certainly, but I think the Braves are going to manage him probably a little differently than the Red Sox. He's entering a rotation where he doesn't have to be the guy. He's not, he's probably considered the 3rd or 4th pitcher. Just go out and and pitch 5 or 6 good innings. When it's your turn, the Braves can give him maybe extra rest throughout the season. And the Braves are looking primarily for him to be ready for the postseason, and they can have that in their mind throughout. Again, anything could happen. His arm could blow out again. We don't know, but that could also happen to anybody. In terms of the ceiling for Dylan Cease compared to Chris Sale, I actually think they're really similar. One's obviously coming from the right side, Sale is coming from the left side, but I think at their max right now, I actually think both of them could be top 10 pitchers in the league. Now, of course, I'm saying at their max, right? So Chris Sale hasn't pitched over 100, 150 innings in a long time, but if he were to get there, if he could put together a season like that again, I think he could still be a top 10 pitcher at least in the National League. And I think that's Dylan Cease has proven that. He's had a top 2 Cy Young year, but he also had a pretty down year last year. They're both high strikeout guys, and so I think that's why the Braves checked in on Cease. I think that's why they were after Nola, and it's clearly why they really like Chris Sale. In terms of Fangraphs projections, I've already mentioned, I'll remind you, I mentioned Chris Sale's projections, 3.74 ERA, 141 innings, 2.8 WAR. Now, Fangraphs does not love Dylan Cease, I think, as much as a lot of people out there do. His projection is a 4.30 ERA, 178 innings, and a 2.7 WAR season. So I'll repeat that. Chris Sale, at least according to Fangraphs, even though he's pitching about 35 fewer innings, is actually still a more a pitcher with higher ratings, higher WAR, 2.8 compared to 2.7. So there's that. One other thought that I have that I think the Braves really do care about is the fact that Chris Sale is a lefty. And he's a nasty lefty. If you've ever seen him pitch, he's sweeping way over. It's not full on Randy Johnson, but it's not very far away from that either. Lefties have a career 203 batting average against Chris Sale. And when you think about Shohei Ohtani and, the Dodgers hitters, Freddie Freeman, the guys coming from the left side, or the Phillies guys, Schwarber and Harper and all those guys, Stott, they're going to have to face Chris Sale in big moments. And I really like the fact that as a lefty, he's going to be going out against some of those really good hitters. The other thing when I think about Chris Sale and putting this deal in perspective is comparing him to other free agents out there. And the fact is the pitching market has just gotten really nuts. And I think Alex Anthopoulos has done a really good job of managing how to go out and find some good value still in the pitching market, because there's not much value out there. I mean, there's a lot of good pitchers, but there's also a lot of guys getting overpaid. And so when I think about that, the free agent market and the market in general, let's start with Tyler Glasnow. Now, he wasn't a free agent. He got traded to the Dodgers, but his extension that they signed, remember, Glasnow is kind of comparable to Sale because they're both often injured. He got a 5-year, $136 million contract. That's $27 million a year. And he is projected for a 3.7 WAR season at $27 million a year. Yamamoto with the Dodgers, of course, 12 years, $325 million, $27 million a year on that contract. He's projected a 3.4 WAR season. Of course, he's going to be really hard to project coming from Japan. What about Lucas Giolito? He had a bad year last year. And, he jumped around a couple of teams, got traded, but he's still able to sign a 2-year, $37 million contract. That's $18 million in 2024. He's only projected for a 2.4 WAR season. Again, you think about that compared to Chris Sale. Sale is probably going to be better if he has enough innings pitched. And then Frankie Montas, who's basically been injured for the last 2 years, was still able to get a 1-year, $16 million deal from the Reds. He's projected for a 2.1 WAR season. But man, I would much rather have Chris Sale than Lucas Giolito or Frankie Montas. He comes with a stronger pedigree. And I just got to remind you guys, anytime he has been on the mound, he has been an elite pitcher in baseball. And not many guys can say that. Guys can go through struggles, ups and downs, just generally in terms of production. That's never been Chris Sale. It's just a matter of, can he stay on the mound? So the free agent market, we know from Alex Anthopoulos and how he's done things since he's been with the Braves, the free agent market is the last place he goes shopping for pitching. It's not that he's unwilling to look at the free agent market. They played there with Aaron Nola, just didn't sign him, didn't get over the finish line. But I think their number one desire for pitching is to develop young guys through the draft, through the international signing, and develop them and extend them, just like just like they did with Spencer Strider. And then trade, I think, is number two, and they've been able to trade for a couple guys. Free agency is the last place, and the only guy in their rotation right now that came through free agency was Charlie Morton, and that was kind of a unique situation. He's older, he's near the end of his career, he has a young family, he lives in Florida, he wants to stay close to them. It was reported that it was basically just Tampa Bay or Atlanta that he was willing to pitch for. Tampa Bay didn't have the money, and so he signs with the Braves, maybe for a little less than he could have if he went shopping at other places. But that's not many pitchers, right? This is a very unique situation. So I just think free agency, it's not that it can't ever happen for the Braves, but it's the least likely place. And I think generally Anthopoulos is very wary of signing pitchers to long-term contracts, especially pitchers who are getting a little older. So I think that's what you're going to see. You're going to see the Braves continue to try to develop pitchers, and the guys that they really believe in, they'll extend. And otherwise, they'll fill out their rotation with guys that they can either trade for or older guys that they can sign short-term contracts to. I don't see them doing a Yamamoto deal. I don't see them, even doing like a Sonny Gray deal. And I think that's why they were never really in it with Jordan Montgomery or Snell or those guys. So this trade is proof positive that Anthopoulos can find better value on the trade market. And it's just, he can go there, and he has proven to be, as far as GMs go, maybe the best trader in all of baseball. Okay, so as we look at the risks with this trade, again, I've already mentioned it, but the obvious one is Chris Sale's health. There is a world in which he's never healthy, and he really barely gets on the mound for the Braves. And in that case, this deal looks kind of bad, right? And then on the flip side, Vaughn Grissom could become a really solid major league player for many, many years. And if both of those things happen, the Red Sox win the trade. And, it's just kind of a pointless trade or not a good trade at all for the Braves in that case, right? It really is just about Chris Sale getting on the field enough, and especially at the right times, again, in the playoffs particularly. Sale getting injured again, it's the obvious risk of the trade, but it's not a big risk in really any other way, right? In terms of salary, Boston's covering a lot of that. And the second year is an option year. And the Braves do still, remember, they're able to maintain their pitching depth because they only have to give up Vaughn Grissom. And so if Sale does go down injured, maybe a Waldrop or Smith-Shawver step up. And there's other guys that are down at AAA as well, like a Winans or a Vines who can step in at times. And the other thing with that is, let's say Sale goes down with an injury mid-year. Well, he's only making $500,000. So it's not like he's weighing down the 2024 payroll. They could always go out in the trade market before the trade deadline and go out and get another starter if they needed to, if they were desperate to do that. So again, the other risk of this trade is Grissom, proving the Braves wrong in a sense and going and becoming an all-star with the Red Sox. Honestly, I would love that. I mean, I really am still rooting very much for Vaughn Grissom. I've liked the guy ever since he made his debut, and I think most Braves fans feel that way. I think a lot of that has to do with how he debuted in Boston. Ironically, he hit that monster shot over the Green Monster, and man, I do hope he finds success in Boston. He basically had to play 2023 when he was pretty much clearly already ready to play in the big leagues, and the Braves just didn't have a spot for him. He hit over 330, I think, in AAA. And so, yeah, there is a world in which Vaughn Grissom becomes an all-star second baseman for the Red Sox. I'm not sure that's the most likely scenario, but I think he is going to be a solid big leaguer, especially, if he can be average defensively, or maybe even just a little below average defensively. I think his bat plays enough where he's going to be a valuable second baseman for years to come with them. The fact is, he simply has a very narrow defensive skill set, and what I mean by that is Vaughn Grissom can pretty much only play second base. He might have been able to prove that he could play left field given the time, but I think his bat is just perfectly suited for second base. He doesn't have crazy power, but he's a doubles machine. He's a high average guy. And for a middle infielder, if he's doing that, if he's hitting over 300, he is going to be a really good player for Boston. So again, I think he's a fun player to watch. He clearly is, has a really good attitude. He worked really hard with Ron Washington over this past year, and I just hope that he's able to just have a long career with Boston. So guys, ultimately what this deal accomplishes, the Braves acquire a pitcher with tremendous strikeout stuff who comes over from the left side and can shut down, when he's at his best, he can shut down the best lineups in baseball. And that's really what the Braves need. And it also allows the Braves to keep Waldrop and Smith-Shawver. They don't have to trade them away to go out and get another starter. Those two also will be able to start in AAA with no major pressure on them. And it sets up 2024 to be a proving ground for both of those guys. And 2025, when Fried and Morton are probably leaving, those guys are going to be needed. And hopefully the Braves can have a really clear idea because of this season who is ready to take the next step for 2025. And obviously, that's one of the negatives of the Chris Sale deal is the Braves have not figured out long-term what their pitching staff is going to look like beyond 2024. I mean, it is good that he has a 2025 option if he proves himself. But beyond that, right, long term, it doesn't really solve much. So that's why Waldrop and Smith-Shawver are still so important to the Braves moving forward. One other thing that this impacts is the bullpen. Ronaldo Lopez was talked about maybe being stretched out and being a starter, and I think that goes away with this acquisition. He can go back to his strength, which is dominating in the bullpen. And guys, the Braves probably have the deepest bullpen in all of baseball. And what Anthopoulos has been doing this offseason is collecting bullpen arms with crazy strikeout stuff. And the Braves pitching staff in general is going to be full of guys who can punch people out. So You know, there is a worst case scenario with this, right? The worst case scenario, especially long term for 2025, is that it's just Spencer Strider and Bryce Elder, and you have 3 open spots because Morton and Freed leave, and Chris Sale doesn't really prove himself, or he's hurt, and then the young guys don't prove themselves either, right? That's the ultimate worst case scenario. I mean, it is possible, but I think the more likely case is that you have Spencer Strider and Bryce Elder coming back. Some type of good year for Chris Sale happens. It might be 100 innings. It might be 120 innings. But that he still proves that he's got something left in the tank. And then either Waldrop or Smith-Shawver, it might not be both of them, but I think one of them at least steps up and proves that they're ready for the rotation. And so that gives you 4 guys for the 2025 rotation. And then, the Braves are still going to have to figure out one spot after that. But one spot's a whole lot better than 3. So I'm really hoping that that's obviously what happens long term. And don't forget, the Braves do have other pitching prospects in the farm system of Spencer Schwellenbach, Owen Murphy, Adam Mayer, Drew Hackenberg. All these guys, if any of them were to show out this season, they can make a major leap towards debuting in 2025 or 2026. So yeah, guys, I'm going to come to a close here pretty soon, but I do want to just spend another minute appreciating Vaughn Grissom. Vaughn Grissom has been a guy that I've rooted for really for the last 2 years. I think it's been a hard go of it for him, just in terms of he's clearly been ready offensively and just hasn't been able to break through. I think if he could have defensively handled shortstop, he would have won that job over Orlando Arcia. But, he just couldn't quite do it. And it wasn't because he wasn't working hard. He clearly was. And he clearly was willing to try to play left field. I think he really wanted to be with the Braves. I think he wanted to stay with the Braves. All of the reports are that he was pretty upset. Not angry at Anthopoulos, but he just wanted to be a Brave, and you appreciate that. But I think Boston's getting a really good dude. I think it's very reasonable that he could be a consistent 3-WAR player for his career, and that's a very good player in baseball. Fangraphs actually already likes him as a 2.3 WAR player in 2024 in his debut season with Boston. So we'll obviously see what happens. So guys, thinking back to the Chris Sale trade one more time, the impact of this trade on the team. My last episode, I was comparing the Dodgers and Braves and trying to answer the question of who's the better team. And I really do think the Braves, even before the Chris Sale trade, were better than the Dodgers. But before the trade, the Phillies, in terms of the pitching staffs, the Phillies were ranked as the best pitching staff in baseball, with the Dodgers second and the Braves third. And now with the Chris Sale acquisition, they have flipped that. So now the Braves are ranked first, the Phillies second, and the Dodgers third. And the Braves have extended their lead in overall projected WAR. So it does, at least on paper, and I know that isn't worth all that much, but on paper it does make the Braves better. And it's just a very, Sale is it's a huge question mark, right? He could give you 170 innings and have a career renaissance and bounce back and be the acquisition of the offseason, or he could hardly see the mound and doesn't really impact the Braves at all. So, when I think about grading this trade, I'm going to give the Braves a B+. I really do like this trade in a lot of ways. Consider again how the Braves exited the playoffs against the Phillies and what they were lacking. I mean, it's not hard for me to think back at that. Elder had that terrible start, and he was toast by that point in the season. But they didn't have that third starter who could shut down a lineup. And if, and I know it's a big if, but if Chris Sale is healthy in the playoffs, he can do that. He's legit. He also brings an edge to the clubhouse, and we talked a lot about the Braves feeling like they lack players with a little bit of edge, and certainly Sale is not lacking that at all. So I think he is going to provide a really interesting addition to the clubhouse and bring that edge that the Braves maybe need. And then again, the Braves got Sale for very little cost. Yeah, they had to give up Vaughn Grissom, a good player, but a player with no path to playing time. So it doesn't really impact them to give Vaughn Grissom up other than maybe depth, right? Organizational depth. But they don't have to give up their pitching prospects. And this makes the pitching staff deeper in 2024 and maintains depth in the system with Waldrop and Smith-Shawver beyond 2024. And again, I'll just repeat this. I know some of you probably wanted the Braves to trade for Dylan Cease, but a trade for Dylan Cease would have meant that probably Waldrop and Smith-Shawver would be going to Chicago. And the Braves' future would really be in question after Cease left in 2025. So, guys, man, we're going to watch. I mean, it is really interesting to see the Braves bring on a player like Chris Sale with so much career, things that he has accomplished in his career, but also the uncertainty moving forward. So, anything could happen, but it is a pretty exciting deal. Thanks, guys, for listening as I broke this deal down, and I will look forward to talking to you again soon.